We're looking at the website Ballotpedia right now. Ballotpedia is an online or digital encyclopedia for everything American politics and elections. So we're looking at this, and obviously here's a map of the United States, and we're going to look at the four methods for filling judgeship vacancies. So when a judge position, which we call a judgeship, becomes available in a state, there are basically four ways in which that's filled. So we're going to start with the state of Texas. That's what most relevant to us. And this website just allows you to go through and look at what every state does. So we talk about it in the textbook, but sometimes there's not a lot of great examples and how things work in detail. So this is a website that would allow you to investigate that a little further. So Texas uses a partisan election, and all a partisan election is compared to a nonpartisan election is where the candidate runs as part of a political party. So when we see an election for a state judge, whether it be the Texas Supreme Court, and you can see right here, all of them on the side here, Court of Criminal Appeals, the Court of Appeals, Texas District Courts, County Courts, or Justice of the Peace Courts. All of those judges are running for election, and they serve various terms. So the higher court, 6 years, 6 years, and then the trial courts at the district and the county and the JP level are 4-year terms. There's some qualifications here: U.S. citizen, resident of Texas, licensed to practice law in the state. That does not apply to the county or JP courts. But they all are running as a member of a party for election. So you run as a Republican, or you run as a Democrat, you could run as an independent, and that's a partisan election. We can see here, no judge older than 74 may run for office. Sitting judges who turn 75 are permitted to remain on the court until their terms expire. And we see that in a lot of states, some level of mandatory retirement. We'll look at a couple others that have 70 at that age, so this is a little higher than that. So again, Texas, we filled judicial openings through partisan elections. Let's scroll back down to our map. And look, where's my map? Go past the map. I'll click back and see if I can get back to my map. All right, let's look at a state like Idaho. Idaho uses the nonpartisan election. So when we run for a office that is in a nonpartisan election, you're running without being endorsed by a political party. So typically in Texas, the only office that you might see that on the ballot would be the mayor's race. Typically, mayors aren't running as a political party, so they just have the names of the mayor candidate. They might have, depending on the state, the incumbent labeled, but typically not a political party. And that's how judicial selection is taking place in Idaho. So still an election, just a nonpartisan election. You can see terms are similar: 6-year terms, 6-year terms, district courts 4 years, magistrates 4 years. And you'll notice here, we'd have to look more into this, not for this video, but the magistrate court, so the courts of limited jurisdiction, operate on a commission selection rather than a nonpartisan election. When we move on, we're going to look at another, let's look at New Jersey here on the East Coast. New Jersey follows a very similar structure to the federal judicial selection, which is an executive appointment method, here labeled as a gubernatorial appointment. So just like the federal government does, where the executive appoints the nominee with the Senate confirming, the same thing's happening in the state of New Jersey, where the governor is the one appointing as the executive, and then the state Senate will confirm that candidate. One obvious difference is there is a kind of a little caveat where the federal judges, once appointed and confirmed, serve life terms, no mandatory retirement. New Jersey has a mandatory retirement age at 70. But they also have a little caveat where they appoint, the initial appointment is only for a 7-year term. And then the governor can reappoint the judge. And if they're reappointed, then they have a full term until their mandatory retirement age at 70. So it's not a continuous process, but it's just a 7-year term initially, and then you could reappoint them more permanently. So that's what the judicial selection looks like with an executive appointment at the state level. And then finally, it's named after the state of Missouri. Merit selection, referred to as the Missouri Bar Plan, is a process of combining those two methods, appointment and election, to get at least an attempt to the best quality judge you can find. So Missouri's doing that with their plan. They were the first, their plan you can see here, since 1940. And then several states are doing the same kind of, or a variant of, this combination, appointment and election. So the election process is what we call a retention election. You're not running against another opponent. You're just running on the yes or no. Do we keep the judge or do we not? So what we typically will see is a judge is appointed when an opening becomes available. And then in the next general election, that judge is running on a retention. So they could serve anywhere from 1 year to 3 years until the next general election. And then they would be on that ballot for a retention election. And if they are retained, so everybody or a majority votes yes, then they would sit for a 12-year term. So a bit longer than the elections. We saw Texas was at the highest level 6 years, at the district court level 4 years, and in Idaho it was 6 years. Maybe some of the lower courts were 4 years as well, but a significantly longer term once you've gone through the retention election. So again, the four methods: partisan election, nonpartisan election, merit selection, and gubernatorial appointment or executive appointment. And then you can click on just these random states. Wyoming does merit selection, New York, partisan elections, Florida, different parts of the country. Florida, 2 methods depending on the level of court: assisted appointment of the Missouri plan or nonpartisan elections. Alaska, the Missouri plan. So several states are doing that merit selection. So anyway, just wanted to give you some examples of these in real working terms, how they look for states that actually use them. So hopefully you'll take something from that.